In institutional communications, especially within the nonprofit and NGO space, there is a common practice that completely dilutes the impact of what are often incredible and life-changing projects. You see, organizations seem completely obsessed with their own processes. I've never truly understood why this is so pervasive. Uh, but if I had to guess, it is likely because these institutions are, for the most part, run by brilliant scientists, policy wonks, and technical experts. So for them, the focus is entirely on the methodology. They want to prove that their work is rigorous and fundamentally sound. Uh, for the general public, the result is really awfully boring. Welcome back to The Narrative Engineer. Today we are diving into an incredibly important aspect of story engineering: show, don't tell. Specifically, we're going to talk about why you have to stop telling people how you work and start showing them why it matters. If you look at the average public sector campaign, or an NGO report, a short story on a website, or even a simple social media post, it usually reads like an administrative logbook. It often includes a ton of metrics about how many workshops were held, how many teachers were trained, and how many institutional partners sat around a conference table, and so forth. Audiences are also frequently told in great detail that this was done correctly. So we are assured that everyone was consulted and everyone voiced their opinion, that the government was closely coordinated with, and that considerations of gender, equity, youth, the environment, vulnerable groups were taken into account. So we are promised also that everything will be sustainable, using the best practices and lessons learned, and so forth and so forth. So let me be just very candid with you. This is really boring and nobody cares. So add to this a thick layer of jargony, technical writing, and you have a recipe for super boring stuff that your audience will scroll right past. What is almost always missing from this communication is the why. What is the actual problem? Why does this issue matter? What is fundamentally at stake, and what will happen to the people involved if nothing is done? This isn't just my opinion. This is backed by decades of behavioral sociology and psychology. Take, for example, the research by psychologist Paul Slovic on what is known as the identifiable victim effect. His research proves that human beings are far more likely to offer help, donate, or emotionally invest in a single specific individual in distress than they are a large, vaguely defined group with a massive statistical need. When you write that you assisted 10,000 vulnerable youth, the human brain struggles to process that scale. It shuts off. But when you tell the story of one specific person, the brain engages. There is also narrative transportation theory, developed by psychologists Melanie Green and Timothy Brock. They found that when people lose themselves in a compelling, human-driven story, their attitudes and intentions change far more drastically than they do through logical, data-driven persuasion. In other words, before an audience can care about your solution, they have to care about the problem. And human beings do not emotionally connect with statistics, acronyms, or pictures of people sitting in a boardroom. There needs to be a personal, emotional connection to the challenge. If you want your stakeholders, donors, or the public to become psychologically engaged with your work, you have to ground the policy in human reality. People don't relate to organizations. People relate to people. This is where the architecture of your story relies entirely on great writing and premium visual production. Audiences prefer seeing the problem. They want to see the challenge and the issue firsthand. They want to know what it actually looks like. Audiences also don't want to be told how the work is being done. They want to be shown. However, showing pictures of a training seminar or a handshake does not translate to effective communication. It's just more process. Audiences want to see the environment. They want to see the homes, the hospitals, the schools, the reality on the ground. They want to see faces. They want to look into the eyes of the people involved. An effective institutional narrative does not start with a list of partners or a summary of activities. It starts by clearly defining the stakes and then using premium, authentic visuals and writing to place the audience right in the middle of that reality. If you find this podcast useful, hit subscribe, share, and comment. It's really helpful, and I will see you in the next episode as we continue to engineer the narrative together.